It has been a blockbuster week of United Rugby Championship action as all four Irish provinces lost, all four South African franchises won, and the Welsh reminded everybody that this is a global league. Let's talk about all of it and even more and start the show. Good evening, everybody. I am joined by the full crew this week. Policeman Ben, Dak, Kaelin, and New Mohammed. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Well done. Very good in unison reply. Yes, this is the podcast that talks about the very low level league as referred to by the fifth choice goal kicker for New Zealand in 2011. The only man to win a Rugby World Cup in a top that did not fit. But less about him and more about the actual rugby. Policeman Ben is back from his holiday. So
It was a holiday.
yeah, I'm just giving the viewers the official line and they can make up their own mind. But there's that much rugby that's happened that we need to talk about. And we are starting with Super Scarlets defeating Leinster in the result of the weekend. Easily, my Scarlets absolutely pulling down the pants of the best team in the world. And I'm delighted. I'll talk about it because it's my team. And yeah, it was one of those like during the week. Because we knew that Leinster were going to rotate and they got the semi-final next week. And we knew that the Scarlets were getting a few players back from injuries. And I kind of had a feeling like, I reckon this will be a game, you know. I reckon that this will be, we got a chance. You're saying there's a chance. And there was. And then we saw the Leinster team on Friday afternoon. And I thought, it's not even the Geordie Barrett All-Stars. They've got Slimani on the bench. RG Snyman's not even here. Got a chance here. Now, there was a couple of internationals, Jamie Osborne, Cian Frawley, Cian Healy. Actually, I think it was an all international front row, to be fair. But I kind of thought, God, we're not bad. The Scarlets went into this game with a positive points difference after 15 games. So I'm thinking, we're not a bad team. And we've got our first choice 10 back. We've got Johnny Williams coming back. Eddie James needed a rest. And I just felt like there was an opportunity. And so it proved. The boys came out of the traps like an absolute, just like a bat of hell. And we had the bonus points sewn up on 45 minutes, pretty much straight after the second half kicked off. And I was just delighted. It's the most fun I've had watching a rugby match. Definitely all season, possibly in over a year. Just that kind of, when you've got that feeling as a fan of, I think something might happen here, and then it does. It's just the best feeling ever. And, you know, I'll be on the Scarlets podcast kind of tomorrow talking about all the in-depth details of it, doing the deep dives and things. But just, you know, if you're naming star players, you're going down the whole team. I think Joe Roberts was a particular standout. He had a stormer, best centre in Wales. And Gareth Davis reading back the years. Just tons of fun. And I felt like the league needed it. It needed this kind of thing to just inject a little bit of life into it, make things a bit spicy. Look, Leinster fans, and I'm sure plenty of you will be watching, because you always do. You win every week, so give us this one. Just chill. I'm sure you won't be that stressed. Look, and obviously all the other Welsh fans are going third choice Leinster. If we beat Leinster thirds. Well, everybody else always says that the URC or Leinster thirds win every game. Well, no, they don't. They win every game apart from the Scarlets, is the official stat. So, yeah, that's me being happy about rugby. Probably the first time on this podcast. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this one and how happy it made them?
I will not comment on the second part for political reasons. I watched this one. I was supposed to be, so I came home for my break from being in the library all day trying to get an assignment done. Came home, was like, I'm not going to watch this. Leinster are going to win handy. Holy shit, Leinster are 2 scores behind. I'm going to keep an eye on this. And as it turned out, I sat in front of the telly and watched another 4 hours of rugby after that point, between that game and the Ulster game as well, which we'll get to later. Honestly, you mentioned Joe Roberts. Shout out to Tane Plumtree. I thought he was phenomenal in this game. I know we'll get on to John Plumtree a little bit later again with that Ulster game shout out. But Tane was excellent. You have the stats there for anyone on audio: 86 meters from 40 carries, 10 out of 10 tackles, 2 line breaks, 4 defenders beaten, which is really impressive for a back row as well, considering he generally carries in midfield. He's not, getting those kind of boosted numbers by handing it out as an edge forward. Popped up in midfield a lot. He was
Yeah,
excellent.
Fafita is the edge forward for the Scarlets. So
Yeah,
Tane's normally in midfield. Yeah, as you right there, Kaelin.
yeah. For what? Every once in a while, I keep an eye on a game and I get it right. But no, just an unbelievable result. And look, I've said it before. The league has needed this. I think it's been a strange season for the URC this year. It feels like a lot of, I don't want to say mediocrity because that can sound so harsh, but a lot of kind of averageness. Like, still at this point of the season, having a losing record has you in the playoffs, which if we'd seen that in another league, we'd probably give out about it. But no, I think it's a great result for the Scarlets, keeps them in the hunt. Yes, it's unlikely. They have to go to South Africa next, and Welsh teams haven't done as well in South Africa as other countries. But as I think I can't remember who it was. I think it was Simon Thomas that said it. Their budgets go, or maybe Paul Williams. Budgets go up next year. The fact they're getting these results, Cardiff winning, Scarlets winning. You know, we had Scarlets should have beaten Connacht at the start of the season for that game as well. And all the results across the years, they probably will feel like they could have done something. We're very likely to see Cardiff in the playoffs after their win. Seen Ospreys in the playoffs last year. This is the direction we want the league to go in. From an Irish point of view, for Leinster, I think they just misfired. I think that's all there's to it. They just did not get going. Ross Byrne was not at his best. I would not for a moment suggest he's checked out or should be dropped or anything like that. He is still, in my opinion, every way as good as any other 10 that they have. He just didn't have a great game. I thought Jim Mangan was really good and Alex Soroka was really good, but apart from that, Leinster's pack, the game just passed them by a little bit too much, and that has been, I don't want to say that has been a concern for them all season because it's not usually. It's actually usually been the other way around, but I think it's one of the first times all year we've just seen Leinster just not really at the races. Up front, like Kelleher, Clarkson, Healy, as you said, was that all international front row. Brian Baird behind them, like you're expecting these lads to have big performances, and I don't think any of them really did. Kelleher is probably struggled for form since Six Nations. Brian Baird has struggled for form all year, and like with the summer tour coming up, if you're picking anyone out to go on that summer tour from Leinster of the younger guys, I thought, as I said, Jimmer Mangan was really good. Jack Boyle was excellent off the bench again. He looks ready to be Leinster's number 2 loosehead. I think Andrew Osborne and Jamie Osborne were decent, and Soroka. Apart from that, not a lot of those younger guys put their hands up, and I think that's the thing we're so used to seeing from Leinster. When they rotate, Fintan Gunn will come in alongside Ross Burnley, play well, or Scott Penny will come in alongside Max Deacon, they'll both play well. I think the fact that Deegan didn't play this game shows that he has been promoted to that first European 23. So I wouldn't, no alarm bells, no panic stations for Leinster. They're fine. They're still the overwhelming favourites for League and Europe, but they just did not fire. And I think they'll be disappointed. I think a lot of players will be disappointed individually, but especially, as I said, Healy, Kelleher, Clarkson, Baird, Frawley, Ross Byrne, the older guys that you're so used to seeing just look a class above in these games.
From a South African point of view, how has Manus van der Merwe, the hooker who started on the bench this week, how's he done since he arrived in Wales?
Contender for Scarlets Player of the Season. What a signing. So Scarlets have made 3 front row signings in Alec Hepburn, Henry Thomas, and Manus van der Merwe, and they've all made a huge impact. Really just made our set piece credible, not just scrum, but also line out. And there was a moment, I'm going to watch the game back at some point, and I might clip it up, where Manus is marking like the blind side at a line out. It's a Leinster throw in and Manus is marking it. The ball goes in, Manus runs, and then he runs across the pitch, across like the whole Leinster backline. As Leinster is shoveling the ball out, Manus just chases every single man. Like his work rate is ridiculous. And I do think that number 3 spot in the Springbok hookers is open. Now Manus has been in alignment camps before. Now I don't know whether him being out of sight, out of mind is going to hurt. Obviously, Grobbelaar is doing well at the Bulls and things. But as a Scarlets fan, part of me wants Razzie to forget he exists, so he just stays with us. And then part of me would love to see him in a green and gold jersey. I
think it's great for him because he was at the Toyota Cheetahs, and then often people think that the guys at the Toyota Cheetahs don't get the recognition. But it's clear that the South African national team scouts all the teams because he was in the alignment camp even before he left for Wales. So good for him.
Yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, speaking of the Springboks, let's now talk about the blockbuster game of the weekend, the one that made you go ooh when you saw it on the roster, which was Glasgow in second versus Bulls in third. I loved this game. If it was proper rugby nerd game, maybe one for the purists, but I think there was enough about it that made you go, wow, this is a high level of rugby match. And it's just a classic example of it doesn't need to be a tri-fest to be enjoyable. It was absolutely brutal. The intensity, two excellently coached teams, two excellent sets of players. And yeah, I just loved watching it. I found every minute of it fascinating. The strategies, the specific tactics that Jake White came up with to counter the Warriors, and obviously they're the reigning champions. And the tone set by this moment for audio listeners, Jan-Hendrik Wessels coming out of nowhere to ruin Sebastian Calcieri's life and hold him up over the line like he's a wee baby. I loved it. Like I said, I loved every minute of this game. I found it utterly engrossing from start to finish. So Mohammed is the South African voice. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, congrats to the Bulls. They went on tour and they've got 3 wins out of 4. So that's excellent. I mean, they started their tour off in a Challenge Cup game in Bayonne. They won that. They went to Ben's Edinburgh and put in a poor performance. But since then, they beat Munster and they revenged Glasgow from the grand final of last season, even though throughout the week they were saying there was no revenge on their minds.
Yeah, that was a lie, because I think as soon as they lost the final last year, all the Bull players said, we've already checked the calendars to see when we're playing Glasgow next. So, yeah, no one's buying that.
I think Jan-Hendrik Wessels had a stormer of a game. I mean, we're talking about Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu, but it's indicative of like the way the Bulls play, that their sort of star player on and off the season is starting at number 1. I think they managed the game really well. I think Devin Williams had a really solid game. He's sort of on and off in this tour, but a guy who sort of left Western Province, and often when someone leaves Western Province for a lesser union like Griquas or Mpumalanga Pumas or EB Elephants, that type of thing, they sort of disappear into the periphery. But he's done really well. He got a chance at the Bulls, and he's sort of grown as not just sort of a wing, but now also playing fullback. I think Canan Moodley played a solid game. He's bulked up substantially since he's
broken. I thought Canan Moodie was unbelievable in defence. I thought that performance from Canan Moodie was Jesse Creel, I want your jersey. I know he was playing 14, but the way his reads and his hitting Glasgow players behind the gain line was very what the box wants from a 13. And we know that he wants to play 13. And just his decision making, I thought I really enjoyed his performance in particular.
And what's also interesting is that Johan Goosen is clearly their first choice fly off, with Pollard coming through next season. But they took really long to take Goosen off this time, and he was like huffing and puffing at the 60th minute. So, and then what was also interesting is that they got the penalty right at the end of the game. So they could have actually kicked it and attempted to deny Glasgow losing bonus point.
Yeah.
But then Valeru tapped it and kicked it out. So the only sort of logic I can think there is they were afraid that they were going to somehow hit one of the poles and the ball bounced back, and somehow they concede a try or something like that. So that was a little strange. But maybe in the moment they just wanted to have the game sewn up. But yeah, well done to the Bulls. They definitely sort of hitting their stride at the right moment. They were on and off throughout the beginning of the season. I mean, to be fair to them, they went on tour in Europe earlier in the season. Then the Springboks went on tour immediately after that. So many of their players didn't fly back to South Africa. They just stayed and jumped.
I think some of the Bulls players had like 10 or 11 weeks in the UK.
Yeah, these guys were joking about playing UK tax in sort of interviews and stuff. And then immediately after the Springboks finished their autumn tour of Europe, the Bulls went on another European tour. So a lot of their guys spent a substantial amount of time there, but they've managed their pack quite well. It's clear that Embros Papier is their first choice 9. Often we forget that this guy has test experience. That's not necessarily a marker of success always. We've got a lot of players in South Africa, so a lot of them have and have not had success at the test arena. But Embros Papier, I've seen a lot of talk on message boards saying sort of like, why doesn't he just move on to overseas, sort of cash in, that type of thing, France or Japan or whatever. But he's reminding people of just what he's able to do. Yeah, good for him.
Ben, what was your view? The Scottish voice on the pod. Is it just a case of injuries just taking its toll on Glasgow?
Yeah, that's the one thing I understand. I mean, there's four, solid Scottish internationals missing, both centres, Jones and Tuipulotu, Xander Viggs and Scott Cummings. And if they don't get 2 or 3 of them back for the knockout rounds, I don't think they'll make the semis, let alone the finals. I think they're going to struggle without 3 of those 4 back. There is chat of Tuipulotu being back. Hugh Jones is very quiet on the front with him at the moment. Don't know what's happened. It's an ankle injury I think he picked up. Xander Viggs, and I don't think he's going to be back by the end of the season. And Scott Cummings, I think he's got quite a severe arm injury. So they're 4 players that really make Glasgow tick. And I mean, playing Carl Steyn at 13, was that his first start at 13 in the Glasgow shirt?
It's his first one in 2 years. I checked.
2 years. It's a long time. And I know they played Ollie Smith at 13 as well a couple of weeks ago. So they obviously tried that. So this is the second. I think against the Bulls with that kind of, strength in the back line, I think playing a winger at centre, outside centre, is always a bit of a risk. And I don't think it paid off. I think that's the problem for Glasgow. It's just unfortunately the injured players they have are so pivotal to their success, because those 4 were key in the final last year in Pretoria. So they need some of them back in time.
The game was scary at the end, though. It was scary to squeaky bum time at the end.
Yeah.
I will say though that Tom Jordan was having a hell of a game until he started to break down.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I only got to see a little bit, like the highlights of it, because Edinburgh game was on at the same time. But that's unfortunate. You can't help the Pope dying, right? And there we are. So there was, obviously it clashed. There was 3 games on Friday, which is unusual. And obviously both Scottish teams played at the same time is almost, it doesn't happen. It just happened because of outside circumstances. But yeah, I think Glasgow's kind of running out of steam at the wrong time. I think that seems to be how it's been the last few weeks, like the Leinster game, this game, home to the Ospreys, the couple of defeats they've wrapped up now, and some of the wins have been a bit scrappy. So they're not going into the business end of the season where they probably wanted to be. But some things are within your control, some things are outside your control. And if TJ's just been, his workload's too much, because he does play 10, 12, or can play at fullback. He's played everywhere across that back line this season. Inevitably, there's going to be some long-term fatigue that builds in. And obviously, he's leaving at the end of the season off to Bristol for the big box.
Oh, yeah. He's going to look like a god playing for Bristol. They're not going to know what hit them.
Wouldn't be hard.
Yeah.
No, I do agree with you there, Ben, because I think if there's any team who feel like they're trending in the wrong direction of the top 4, it is Glasgow, and by some distance. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's easy to forget. They were pretty much fully fit last year for the playoffs. And even the year before they weren't. They had a couple of knocks. I remember, didn't Sione have to move to 13 the year before, and they played Munster in the quarterfinal, I'm pretty sure, and he was great
and
there.
TJ got sent off that game as well, didn't he?
And Jordan got sent off. Granted, he was a little bit more of a newbie at the time. Whereas now, you 4 potential Lions sidelined. At least 3 certain Lions tourists, if they're fully fit, sidelined and out.
And potentially starting 15 as well there. 2, I'd say 2, at least 2 of them.
Yeah, and we've discussed, check out our Lion series from earlier on in the year.
Picking the Pride was very popular.
It was very popular.
And another miss for them is Heko Venter. I know he's going, but he's played his last game for Glasgow now because of that horrible eye gouge he had against Leicester, wasn't it? I think at home. I think was it Dan Coles. I think he went for his eye, and he got 6. I think there's a 6 or 8 week ban, so that rules him out for the rest of the season. And he was kind of a bit of an unsung hero, I think, in that sort of, kind of back 3 of the pack. Kind of sort of just got about his business, very, very popular within that squad, a bit of a leader, very understated kind of performer. But again, he's out as well, and that was someone that could kind of fit in and out of that squad with relative ease. And now he's gone. So yeah, it's looking difficult for Glasgow because of the circumstances they find themselves in, some within their control, some outside. But there we are.
Yeah, but just as a game of rugby, like I said, I couldn't have enjoyed it more. It was nerdy as well, which obviously being a nerd.
Bulls away games and Bulls home games are the biggest culture clash in this league. At home, they are just, we'll run everything, we'll run over the top of you. It's fun, the sun is shining, and then as soon as they get on the road, we're going to kick the ball 40 times and munch you in every tackle. It's impressive.
I was saying to Enver Velman, I was like, it's difficult to analyze the Bulls because at home, you get the ball. And it's like, right, let's see what their attacking shape is. Oh, they scored.
Yeah.
and there's not much to analyze there. And then away from home, it's just like you said, let's knock the ball on purpose so we can have a scrum, because that's how we win these things, which is just rugby values when you think about it. Okay, next game that we need to talk about is Cardiff against Munster, the other Friday night game. Another great game in terms of just injecting a bit of spice into the league. Look, there's loads of talking points out of this. Firstly, it was great to see a great crowd in Cardiff. Decent crowd in Llanelli for the Scarlets as well, but Cardiff getting over 11,000 for this.
That's
Great to
amazing,
see,
really good.
obviously, their first proper home game since the takeover from the WRU. Fans getting behind them. And look, Cardiff getting the three. Oh, it was only 3 tries in the end. I thought it was 4 tries. Okay.
3. Oh no, it was. Sorry, but penalty try. It's there.
There you go
Yeah,
then.
bottom right. Yep.
Oh, that's a URC feedback for you. That's confusing. So look, Cardiff could be playing anyone. If Cardiff were playing Toulouse away, I would back them to score 4 tries. They just are able to do it. It's a fantastic trait that they've got. The question about Cardiff over the last 2 years, since Matt Sherritt's been the head honcho, has been defence. Has been very iffy at best. And in these last 2 games, I don't know whether there's just been an emotional edge to it, a desire to defend, or what, or they just become aware of the fact that their defence has become a bit of a meme. They've tightened it up and they showed an attitude to it. Now were they playing against teams that maybe suited the way they defend in Ospreys and Munster? Maybe. But yeah, I caught the last 7 minutes of this. Harley, shout out Harley, Dr. Harley Worthy, was having a heart attack. What was it? 23 phases at the end that Munster went through with the clock in the red. Whew, that you wouldn't wish that on any fan. But yeah, just again, from a Wales point of view, great to see. From a league point of view, it's exactly the kind of result that the league needs to keep things interesting. Cardiff now, what is it, 6th in the league, 5th in the league? 5th in the league with 16 games played. Can't turn your nose up at that. What an effort. So
yeah,
I'll let you go now, Kaylin. I know you're excited to speak about this one.
I'm nothing if not amicable after games like these. Like, I cannot fault Cardiff. They were excellent. To his credit, one of the first text messages I got at full time was Harley, who was a gent at the best of times. But an unbelievable win for Cardiff. Like, Munster ultimately, from their perspective, they had 2 yellow cards. They conceded 26 points in that period. That is the losing of the game right there, as is line out, etc. But when we talked about Cardiff towards that middle part of the season, the kind of Six Nations window, as we like to call it, it felt like they were just trending away. They got hammered by the Sharks at home, which we remember, but probably should have gotten a result against Connacht and fell away. We're looking in a really good position against Leinster, but fell away. Did pip the Lions, got pipped by Benetton, got that win last week on Judgment Day. But now it feels like they're in a position now. I think they will make top 8 from here, because above all else, they're 11 points clear of the Lions, who are probably the one team from outside the top 8 that you're thinking they can get 10 points. They're probably the one team you're thinking can get 10. It's an unbelievable result for Cardiff. It's a great result for the league. Again, as I said, great turnout. That's 2 wins for Cardiff over the Irish teams. 2 wins over Irish teams this weekend for the first time. Well, the first time that Welsh regions have beaten Munster, Leinster, and the same weekend since 2009. First time the 4 Irish provinces lost on the same weekend since 2015. And look, there's a lot, I've said it before, there's a lot of hubris in Irish rugby. There's a lot of thinking that we're unflappable and unstoppable and we got the perfect system and the perfect everything. But look at Welsh rugby. £4.5 million budgets. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously that's going up. We know that. If you don't know that, you don't know. But like, their budgets are going up, and they're like another unbelievable result. As you said, Cardiff's system probably did suit what they're playing against. Not the best counter jumping team, a great maul. Probably not the best defensive team, but they do have an aggressive blitz, and that managed to shut Munster down 4 passages. I don't think the whole way, Munster did have openings, no doubt about that. It was not a one-sided, performance on either direction, but an important win. And I think that Stormers game, as you said, you'd back them to get 4 tries there. that'll be enough to secure top 8 for next year. Hopefully Champions Cup for next year. Sorry, Ben, because I know it'd be your Challenge Cup that could derail them. But no, a great result for Munster. Ultimately, look, it's three losses on the bounce against three very mixed teams. You know, you could say the first two you got bullied, but this one was not a case to be bullied. This was just having nothing left in the legs. I think Munster ultimately looked tired after a long season. The lineout is a mess. They're going to admit that themselves. Alex Codling will be back in the building by the time that most people listen to this podcast, and will probably judge them off of that. But at the moment, it's all over the place. With Niall Scannell, who has had a career of being a brilliant thrower, an 85, 90% thrower his whole career, is missing left, right, and centre. You know, it's a multifaceted issue. You know,
Is Tom Ahern a jumper?
Tom Ahern didn't play today, but yes, usually. Now, the only thing is, I think that's more onto calling. I don't think there's any coach in the world who tell you, because last week Tom Ahern was only had one line-out take. I don't think there's any coach in the world who tell you throw to the 6'9" guy once out of 15 throws. Do you know what I mean? I think that's on calling. I think that's on Ty Byrne. I think obviously coaching. I've used the word naivety before, and I don't mean that to be this like FU term, but that is natural in young coaching staffs. I think there's a bit of naivety there with that. But when you have, as I said, when you have the likes of Niall Scannell misfiring, Jack Dunn who tries his heart out, but he's not winning collisions. You know, Alex Thankful and Tom Farrell look good, but not at their best. And I think that was the trend. And I think apart from halfback, I think halfback was the only position you'd say, if you put them into the Cardiff team, Cardiff get better. You know, like one-on-one matchups. And to be fair, the two number 8s, I know we mentioned Talupe Faletau as Alliance bolter before. Himself and Gavin Coombs were excellent in this game. Coombs was Munster's busiest player. Faletau was the busiest player probably in the league this weekend. He was phenomenal, had that break that led to one of the tries. And he's looking unreal. Do you know what? That break that he made down the wing, I must say, gave me Ardie Surveyor vibes. Just sauntering down, big number 8.
I believe on your podcast I once said that Talupe Faletau is better than Ardie Surveyor, and that was the year that Ardie Surveyor won World Player of the Year. And I didn't say that over the course of his career he is greater. I said that there on that day in history he was better.
Yeah,
and Faletau's got form. Faletau's got form for that running down there because he did it against Scotland in Edinburgh, didn't he? And obviously it was brought back for that, hurdle of the tackle. But he does like a little saunter down the wing.
He did it 14 years ago against Ireland in a World Cup to knock them out.
He's just that was back in Afro Faletau. Bring it back. But
as someone did say back in Toby Faletau terms, which might be a bit rude, but I think it's back when we knew him as Toby Faletau as opposed to Talupe, that was true. But what a player! We'll get to it in a few minutes with Dan Idiot as retiring as well. Two stalwarts of the game, and it's incredible to think that I first watched those guys in 2011 break Irish hearts mentally and physically down in Wellington, and now they're still going. Okay, the Ospreys didn't break any Irish hearts this year, but they're still breaking hearts and breaking people's bodies up 14 years later at the most attritional position. It's phenomenal careers, but Cardiff, fair play, like you said, big attendance. There's a real buzz around Cardiff rugby. I think someone said it online. Best way to get people in the gate, winning matches. Do you know it's the surest form. They play a great brand. They've got a great atmosphere there at the Cardiff Farms Park. To be quite honest, lads, I know I'm a Munster fan. I know I'm based in Limerick, but if you ever want us to do a live podcast there, we will turn up. I would love to be in the Cardiff Farms Park someday for a game. Live podcast, the whole thing before a big European game or something, I don't know. And we'll enjoy it. And look, credit to Cardiff, an unbelievable win. And I'm delighted. I would be delighted if they get into the top 8. I've said this all season. We need every nation in the top 8 of the URC every single season to call it a success. And I think we're going to have that now. I don't want to jinx it. I think we will. And hopefully we do, because it will be well deserved.
Yeah, I definitely second you with the Arms Park. The 2 seasons I've been, obviously both Edinburgh games away last season, it was a fantastic day out. The Saturday last year and the Sunday the year before, and it's fantastic. The terrace standing, people are loud, gets tetchy, it gets boisterous, and at the end of the day, everyone turns around and said, "Good game," and you walk off. It's a really good atmosphere. It's just very, very pleasant.
We'd love to host Cardiff at Durban for the quarterfinal.
Yeah. Well,
it will happen, yes. You never know.
I'm contractually obliged to mention the fact that not only have Cardiff beaten the Sharks twice in Durban, but they once beat them 35-0, which led to a certain Sean Everett being sacked. But it's not quite talked. not quite time to talk about him.
2 birds, 1 stone right there, just throwing it out.
It is time to talk about the Sharks winning over in Ulster. So, okay, tradition says I let the winner speak first. So, Mohammed, I'll tell you what happened whilst I wasn't watching this game, but I was being kept abreast of it by a friend of mine who is a professional coach and he's South African. And he basically sent a whole list of messages of all the reasons why the Sharks wind him up so much, not as an entity, just as a rugby team, and all of their problems. And it was a big old list of WhatsApps. And then the last one he sent was, and the worst thing, the thing that grinds his gears the most, is that they're probably still going to win. And win they did from 19-0 down, 22-19. Oh, I just realized I need to bring the website up. They can't, Mohammed, they can't keep getting away with it.
Yeah, we're riding our luck, very much so. Happy to get 8 points from a possible 10 on tour, but there's lots to work on. The usual suspects, I mean, I've got the Sharks ball out. I've got my Cape Town Marathon t-shirt out in support of my friends running the London Marathon. But yeah, Sharks, it's fussy, it's hooker, it's Andre Este isn't keeping us in these things. Game of 2 halves again. In the first half, I made a list of people I'd like to replace John Plumtree. It goes Franco Smith, Johan Ackerman, Swayze de Bruin, a certain Edward Jones. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. And then Jimmy Stonehouse. But then everything turns around. I don't know what they said to the guys at halftime, but I mean, we only won by a small margin. So I think playing once again on an artificial pitch, somehow they didn't adapt. No silly yellow cards this game. Eben Smith wasn't there. I was somewhat concerned because even though he does get at least 1 silly yellow card, he's still a huge influence. The fact that before the game we already knew that Grant Williams wasn't fit enough to play and Bradley Davids was on the bench, that was a concern because Grant Williams obviously does a huge impact. Jaden Hendricks probably absorbed all the criticism of the last 3 games where he started and played subpar for a guy with his experience and his test experience as well. Jordan Hendricks, however, the fact that we don't have anybody actually pushing him for the starting fly-off position. Siamasuku is a shadow of his former self last season. Last season, he only broke into the team midway through the season. That was due to injury, I believe. And he had incredible form that went all the way to helping us win the Challenge Cup final. But Masuku, though I rate him as a player, he's really struggled this season. So that means that Jordan Hendricks effectively doesn't have anybody pushing him for starting because he missing touch twice in such a crucial game. When the forwards sort of got us the penalty, now we can sort of relieve the pressure. That was of huge concern. Happy to smash and grab another result.
That's smash and grab exactly is the word. Caelan will also be losing sleep over this.
I think Ulster have been losing sleep over a lot of this season, if we're being entirely honest. And I've come on here so many times and defended Ulster, and every time I have, they've backed it up with a loss. But this one, I think this is the epitome of both team season. I tweeted this at the time. The Sharks, we only play for 10-15 minutes, and that better be enough. That's all they did. Do you know? And to their credit, they come out the second half.
Jaden, just play the ball, man. What are you doing?
Yeah, true. For those on audio, apologies. But yeah, no, they only played for about 20 minutes. Do you know what I mean? That's all they had to do. When they hit that gear, when they hit that stride, they're flying it. For Ulster, I think what we've seen here was what happens when the depth just becomes an issue. Ultimately, and I don't mean to disparage any players, but when you have Callum Reid coming off the bench, when you have Matty Ray starting, obviously Matthew Dalton was on the bench as well, and they didn't use Dave Shanahan because John Cooney was injured to give Nathan Duff the full 80. I think Ulster we're just seeing that pinch. And if I'm going to make an overall point about Irish rugby, if I'm being entirely honest, I think this weekend was a real eye opener. Now, bad eye openers can be good. I want to get that out there, right? But an eye opener insofar as 2 years ago, this time 2 years ago, We 3 Irish teams in the semi-finals. We had an all-Irish quarter-final as well. Now we're going to be very lucky to see 2 Irish teams in semi-finals. If we're being entirely honest, we could even see no Irish teams in the top 8. Munster, Ulster play each other. That obviously changes things. I understand that.
Apart from Leinster, obviously.
Apart from Leinster. Yeah, sorry. I meant to say 1. Sorry. We may only see 1 in the top 8. That to me is eye-opening. I think this is what happens when budgets get cut at exactly the wrong time. Ulster, 2021, 2022, into 2023, we're building something. They look like contenders. And some of the guys that performed best at the weekend were those guys. Jacob Stockdale, phenomenal. Best performance I've seen him play in a long, long time. And I'm a Jacob Stockdale truther. Shout out to Alan Latham, who is actually honorary president of the Supporters Club.
He's had a very good season. When he's been fit, Jacob Stockdale.
Unreal season. And another shout out to a man who I think listens to us, Andrew Dunhu. I found a tweet on his profile from 2017 saying Jacob Stockdale is going to be a very special talent because he has a pinned, and shout out. That was a great shout. But Stockdale was brilliant. Izuchukwu was excellent. Izuchukwu, I've been banging this drum for ages. He should be in the Irish 23. If he is not in the Irish 23 in Chicago in November, I will be doing some serious giving out because he is quality. He has everything. He has everything Baird has, everything Ahern has, everything James Ryan has, everything Joe McCarthy has. He has it all. He should be there. But ultimately, it was the depth that got to Ulster. It was the fact that their squad is being cut. Like, I'll pull it up here now, if you just give me 2 seconds. These are the players that are leaving Ulster next season. Not all for the same reason, but this is how many players are leaving next year. Andy Warwick, Sam Queen was a short-term signing, as was Ty Wackroy. Zach Solomon, Cameron Doe, Corey Barrett, Martin Moore retired. Alan O'Connor, Kieran Treadwell, Matthew Ray, Ruben Crothers, Michael McDonald, John Cooney, Aaron Sexton, already left, Rory Telfer, Rob Little, short-term signing, and Ben McFarlane. That's a lot of players.
Did you say John Cooney?
John Cooney, yeah.
Yeah.
John Cooney's there. That's a lot of players. And that's a lot of your second, third choice guys. And this is what happens. This is what we've seen in Irish Rugby the last few years. They had to cut costs. Best place to do it is your second, third string and develop. But that is why the provinces, as a collective, have taken a step back. Bar Leinster, I think Leinster are a stronger team than they were this time last year. But that is why we're seeing this, because it's the same thing for Connacht. It's the same thing for Munster. It has been the same thing for about 3-4 years now. The squads were primed. They were primed to be URC contenders every year. And now I look at Ulster and I just think this is the epitome. This is the snapshot game. This proved why the Sharks are what we think the Sharks are. Frustrating. Absolutely. I would not like to be a Sharks fan either. But I'd also not like to be an Ulster fan because I think their squad has just been gutted. Financial mismanagement from Johnny Petrie. Yes. From the Ulster branch. Yes. Did they need to lay down the stadium? I don't know if they needed that new pitch. But it is on both the branch and the union across Munster, Connacht and Ulster that we have seen this, and they have slid back. I'm not saying this because they lost the Welsh or anything like that, but this is the first time in 10 years that 4 Irish teams have lost in the same weekend. And we are heading into in my opinion, the biggest interbro that we have had in quite some time. Because if there is a draw and we see only 1 Irish team in the top 8 of the URC, that should call for crisis meetings within Irish rugby, because we cannot have that, because we have, I'll put it in the blandest terms I can, we're too rich for that. We have too much funds for that to be happening. So I hope through prayer or whatever else, we see 3 Irish teams in the quarterfinals. But as of right now, and of what we've seen from Ulster and from Munster and from Connacht, it looks like it's going to be 1, probably 2. And honestly, I don't think that's good enough. And that is across the board. That is, you cannot blame one team, cannot blame one coach, cannot blame one man. That is across the board and it needs to be looked at. But Ulster, commiserations. Sharks, well done. Unbelievable game, as you said. Just so much fun to watch. I love watching Jacob Stockdale in full flight. I love watching Werner Koch, actually. I'm sorry. He's the epitome of a guy, and I'll finish on this. He's the epitome of a guy who you hate watching when he's against you. But if you're rooting for his team, he is so much fun because he gives 125% every time. But yeah, no, hopefully Ulster can bounce back. Apologies, Ben. I do hope they win in Edinburgh the last game of the season and get into the top 8. But if they don't, or if Munster don't, and we only have 2 teams, conversations have to be had. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, if they have startups every morning in the IRFU, I think they'll be pulling up the headline that says first time all 4 Irish provinces lose in 10 years and say, the thing that you hope that they're saying is we've already got a plan in progress to solve this. Or if they don't, it's going to be a very difficult morning. Before we go on, I just want to say, if you are enjoying the conversation that we're having so far, the energetic, enthusiastic conversations, make sure that you hit that red subscribe button. We are aiming for 2,000 subscribers by the end of 2025, and we would love it if you were one of them. If you are listening on audio formats, make sure that you give a 5-star review and you share a link with a mate. It really helps us to grow on that platform. It's difficult to grow audio platforms, so if you can give us any help at all, we massively appreciate it. All right, let's change up the person who's been talking and go to a Scotalia internal derby and go to Policeman Ben, who has thoughts on Zebre versus Edinburgh.
Yeah, I really don't know what that performance was about on Friday night. I think it was atrocious. Sean Everett came out and said we had some really strong moments, but ultimately we were disappointed with the result. I don't know what game he was watching. We were shocking. First half was one of the worst halves of rugby played this season. There's been a few, the Lions game, obviously earlier in the season when we were 42-0 down or whatever it was at that point. It's just really bizarre because we've obviously had that Biltong series we won 2, lost 1. Obviously the Sharks game, I wasn't here last weekend, but I was quite disappointed with how that ended up because we probably put in one of our best all-around performances. We were just a little bit unlucky in the last 5-10 minutes. Jack Brown was held up over the line, but to go from that to last Friday was deeply worrying. The only positive I can take from it is that it doesn't seem like there are any injuries, and it may be the case that players have took their foot off the gas in anticipation of next week's semi-final against Bath at home, which is clearly, probably one of the biggest games Edinburgh's had in quite some time. I think it'd be a number of years, probably since the Ulster semi-final in the COVID hit season, when we lost, when Ian Madigan nailed that very late penalty from memory. So yeah, it was just poor. I think Bowen Venter went over with 2 tries, sort of late, mid to late second half, and then there was a point in which we had a line out at 22-18 down. I think it was 75th minute. It was botched. Again, our line out has been appalling all season. It doesn't seem to matter who has that shirt, the number 2 shirt, whether it's Dave Cherry, whether it's Patrick Harris, or whether it's Ewan Ashman, whether I think it was Williams. I think it was Angus Williams was the replacement hooker on Friday night. Forgive me if I've got his first name wrong.
Harry Morris.
Can't remember. But in any event, Harry Patterson with the fire extinguisher. I don't really understand what he's carrying that for.
Yeah, so for those on audio, the URC website with the player pictures is actually a great resource. If you need headshots of players for any reason, you're making a graphic or something, get the player pictures from here. They're great. But they do like banter photos, apart from Leinster, who just stand there like this. And
too professional.
And it's actually quite funny because all of the Irish photos are airbrushed and tidied up and everything, and all of the Welsh ones are like grainy, shot with a old digital camera from 2008, I think. This chap, Harry Patterson, is holding a fire extinguisher. There is a subgenre of URC player headshots with props, and I'm here for it.
But going back to that line out, it's 22-18. It's botched. It's very similar to the Benetton game when we lost in the last minute there, where again a botched line out while ahead or within attacking range, and it's botched. It goes sort of just out inside the 10-meter line. Penalties given for not rolling away, and he didn't need to leave his arm in. It was one of those silly things. Just he's been told, tackle, arms away, leave it, and he's still doing it. And I'm just like, move your arm away, mate. You don't need to do this. It's a penalty bang in front of the sticks. At which point, Zebre said over the post 25-18. I was like, and I did text that, said game's gone. Obviously, I got that wrong because lo and behold, 3 minutes later, into the red. I think 10, 11 phases in off the last play, and Darcy Graham, to be fair, runs a very, very good line as he always does, and latches it over to Matt Curry, who goes in the corner. Obviously tried to dive in, couldn't do so, and I'm still thinking Cammy Scott. It's a very, very difficult kick, a lot of pressure on a young lad's shoulders. He'd obviously come on as replacement 10. Ross Thompson had a poor game again, missed one very easy conversion, which would put us in a winning position here if he'd made that. And Cammy Scott, to be fair to him, a pressure kick. I've turned away. I'm like, he's not going to make this. Turn back on, and he's split the post. So it's a draw, which we didn't deserve. And I think Zebre will be pretty aggrieved about a game like that, where they probably should have had it sewn up. Yeah, I don't understand our side at the moment. And someone I posted on Twitter or X immediately afterwards, just snatched a draw at the expense of a poor performance. And one of the lads that I followed on Twitter, he just replied and said, "But what about the rest of the game?" And also then he posted, I think a little bit later on, I'm presuming it's an anonymous Edinburgh Rugby fan account. And they posted, I think the next day, is that what is it about our side that is letting us down so much when we've got a wealth of internationals? We play so well against the 3 South African teams in a row, go to Zebre away, who they don't have a wealth of talent, but they just have a cohesion and camaraderie there that seemed to be completely lacking when we were playing on Friday night. And I don't really get it. And again, it's got to be Sean Everett. I just don't understand him. I just don't think he has that leadership in him. It seems to be like, if we win, we're lucky. I don't think it's because of him. I think it's just the players decide to turn up. And if we lose, it's probably because he just hasn't been able to motivate them sufficiently enough. There was a strong enough team there on Friday to win that. But again, whether he's paying no notice to it and just wants to focus on next Saturday. But it was a difficult watch. It was a difficult watch because we are still in the hunt for that 8th. But if we get Leinster away, finishing 8th, that's an automatic knockout anyway. We're not going to go to Dublin and beat Leinster. If they finish top of the log, which they will do, and we finish 8th, we might as well just pack up now and just focus on the semi-final if we don't want to be playing Leinster away in a quarter-final. Because we went to Glasgow a couple of years ago, lost by 62 or whatever it was, didn't they? It was horrendous defeat for them. So
the home away thing, if I was high up in the SRU or something, I'd be sending someone like, just go with Edinburgh to an away game, because there's
a massive drop off. There's a drop off. We've won 2 away games all season. Van in the Challenge Cup and Munster in Cork, where I don't know what happened that night. It was just against the norm. Munster didn't play particularly well. We got a couple of lucky tries, but our away performance this year has been atrocious. Every single away game. The 2 Italian away games plus the South African tour and the Ospreys game. I think there's 4 of those 5 games really, really stick out in the memory. The Ospreys game was appalling. And the 2 Italian. The Benetton game was appalling as well. So I don't understand it.
Zebra's 5th win of the year, their best season ever. Now level on wins with Connacht, and just a brilliant story for them this season. I can't remember if we've said it on this pod, but they're not for sale anymore. They're
we did talk
around.
about that a few weeks ago. Yeah.
So just great vibes. I think no one's got beef with Zebra, so everyone enjoys seeing them win, whoever it's against. And it's just fantastic for the league. Unfortunately, it seems the Dragons have taken over the moniker of the team that's, not the one that wins. But yeah, it's just if you are a Dragons fan, you're looking at Zebra or someone like Benetton has been in the past, or someone like even Edinburgh or someone like that is a team that has been waving boys, and you can get out of it. So yeah, but just a brilliant story. They'll be gutted not to have gotten that win. So they could have been on 6 wins for the season, which is more than Connacht. It wouldn't have made much difference to their league position. So they're only here for the vibes anyway, so that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, just a good news story all round is Zebra this season. What's the next game? Stormers versus Benetton. Right. Okay, this one was a bit different. So a one-sided fixture, I think it's fair to call it. 56 points to 5. And look, I'm someone who's slagged off the Stormers a lot this season and criticised them and said that they rely too much on their best players. And it turns out their best players is Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu. What would they be without him? A try, 2 try assists, a drop goal, 2 penalties, and 6 conversions.
Is that the full house?
It's the full house. It's the full house. It's the perfect game. It's talk about ability to do whatever he wants whenever he wants it. We can analyze the Stormers, Mohammed, but it's all about Sacha these days.
Yeah, it was slightly more of a team performance compared to last week. The defense was much better. So whatever the coach Dobson was really upset at the end of last week. So they might have had some stern words in Belleville. Sacha controlled the game a bit more. He seemed to be more mindful, and we have to also give credit to Stephen Unger. It's very someone who was a baby bok, never played senior test rugby, has moved around a lot within the South African system, but he was constantly talking to Sacha and that type of thing. So that was quite good to see, because people were like writing Angara off because he's competing with Janchis and the other scrum offs at the Stormers, of which they have quite a few good ones. Although they are going to lose Janchis to Bordeaux, and they're losing another scrum off to possibly, it keeps being speculation, to the Bulls. So I think he was a bit more mindful about managing the game. And with Warwick Galant and having a fit Damien Willemse on your inside as well, that helps a significant amount. Even though Damien Willemse got a yellow card at one point, they still managed the game quite well. The Stormers obviously suffered a bit in the scrums. Sandy struggled somewhat, but then he came on again for Brock Harris later in the game when Brock Harris got injured, and then he actually did quite well. So the scrums are a bit of a gamble there. I think having Warwick Galant at fullback helps a lot. He had a better game. His form has been off and on. He had a fantastic season with the Stormers. They won the URC. He went overseas to France. He only stayed there for one season. He came back. And since then, he hasn't necessarily been in the best of form. They've even rotated their wings this week and still got a good result. I mean, Suleiman Hudsenberg, of sort of like the Hudsenberg family dynasty here in Cape Town, he came off the bench and played well, while Senatla and Zas played really well. Yeah, Murat sort of led the charge this week as well as last week. And I think the Stormers are a bit more focused now, a bit more understanding of like where their strengths and weaknesses lie. And the fact that they've sort of learned, it's almost like a test, or they've learned from last week's back and forth with Connacht. And it's just sort of like overrun a really good Benetton team. At one point, Tommaso Menicello seemed to want to come off because he was like huffing and puffing. The physio was with him, but he stuck around. So yeah, I think, and again, I watched this from home this time, and the stadium didn't look as full as similar to last week, but the friends I know who did attend said the atmosphere was great. So the Stormers are now trying to secure the top 8, the race to 8 position. I just hope and pray that they do not get 5th place, because then we would have to play them in Durban, and that's not going to go well.
I think the Bulls don't want them either. The Bulls are like, we've had that nightmare before. We don't want to play the Stormers again. From a Benetton point of view, down to 8th again now, and it's just they're going to be squeaky bum getting into the playoffs. They've got Glasgow at home, and then Caelan, you already told me once who they got final day.
Munster in Cork.
Oof.
It's a heck of a Friday to kick off the final round. 6:30 Stormers against Cardiff. If I had this, I knew this off by heart earlier on. Now I forget. Yeah, so 6 o'clock Stormers against Cardiff, GMT. Edinburgh against Ulster 7:35, and Munster against Benetton at 8 o'clock in Cork. There is a 0% chance that those games are not impactful on the final 8. That is like, these games are drawn up in usually around this time of year. It's usually early, and then they release it in May. But they have nailed it this year.
They have, yeah, 100%. There's so much jeopardy going into that Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. Cannot wait. Next game that we're going to talk about, not going to spend tons of time talking about on this YouTube channel. You'll see lots of chat over this. You'll see 3 separate pods at least talking about this game. 57 points to 24. The Ospreys defeating the Dragons at home. The most points scored by any Welsh region in any game this season, as far as I'm aware. The Dragons were winning this game after half an hour. Just an odd one. If you watch the highlights, I watched the highlights shortly before we jumped on here. Dragons, it's literally one missed tackle try conceded. It was tough to, even I'm just watching the highlights package, it was tough to watch. You know, I had Harley messaging me during the majority of the game when it was close, saying this isn't the best game he's ever seen. And then, like I said, it was a case of Ospreys beat one defender at try time. And it's just disappointing from the Dragons. Too easy to play against. I think the thing that we need to focus on is Dan Lydiate retiring, ultimate legend of Welsh rugby. When someone says Dan Lydiate to me, I think of his performance against France in 2012, when Wales won the Six Nations. He was Six Nations player of the tournament, chopping down French players for fun back when Wales were good. So congratulations, Dan. Nice for him to finish. Well, I don't know. He might go down and play in South Africa, but finishes at the Dragons, the team that he broke through with over 15 years ago, against the Ospreys, a team that he played for a lot. Just a nice kind of bit of serendipity to it there, which is cool.
I don't want to say like end his career now or anything like that because he's a legend, as I said. I would almost like if that was the last we seen and that he walks off, as he said, in the Liberty, possibly the last time we ever see the Ospreys at the Liberty Stadium. We don't know.
No, they'll play there next season. Somehow those won't be ready.
Okay, fair. Aside from that, my apologies. But to see him walk off, standing ovation, like as we said, a legend in the game. You always think of that game against France, which absolutely he was unbelievable that day. I think of that World Cup quarter-final against Ireland, as I mentioned there earlier, but also how the contrast, like it was Dan Idiot and the chop tackling machine against, I think Stephen Ferris was the other side, and that was when the choke tackle came into vogue, was that 2011 World Cup, and you just had this clash of styles. And
the famous one on Wilgenia.
The famous one on Wilgenia, yeah, was a few weeks before that, and it's amazing to think that obviously Ferris's career was blighted by injuries after that, but to think these two guys were almost at the forefront of that. That was an Irish tactic, the choke tackle, the chop tackle was a Welsh one, and they're still there. Do you know, like there's no, it's like that thing I always say, like there's no right or wrong way to win rugby matches, and I think it'll always be Lydiat's legacy. Like forget the Sexton loop and things like that. Like it's the Lydiat chop tackle. Like can we say that? Like honestly,
yeah, I think we can. So yeah, like I said, there'll be loads of other podcasts on this YouTube channel talking about it. If you're listening on audios, if you search RAP, WRRAP, they'll be giving the deep dive on. You'll have Ospreys fans and Dragons fans talking about it. I think the last note from an Ospreys point of view is Dan Edwards, probably their player of the season as a young fly half. Didn't get much opportunity to shine during the Six Nations for Wales when he was in there very briefly. But yeah, the Abs couldn't really be playing much better, I don't think. So nice one for him. And then last game of the weekend, one that, look, it's two teams that probably aren't in playoff contention, so kind of that's why it's last. Lions versus Connacht. A win for the Lions after a really abysmal performance against Benetton last week. So Mohammed, what is there even much to say about this game? Do you even say that they're salvaging pride here? Because feels a bit like too little too late.
No, well done to them. They've really picked themselves up. I think it's also a reflection of just how important Henko Venter is to the Lions because he wasn't there last week and just his presence seems to lift the team. Edel van der Merwe had a good game again. The fact that they can sort of swap out these really two good scrum halves, that's quite good. Koen Haan had improved game. I think it was interesting is that they generally rotate Renzo du Plessis and JC Pretorius because these guys bring a lot of impact. But both these guys started, and Renzo du Plessis got man of the match. He also got a yellow card, but he did carry quite well. He sort of played to the expectation that he has. Ruben Schoeman didn't get a silly yellow card, and since the Currie Cup, he's sort of been known for that, unnecessary stuff like that. Jaco Visagie was captaining. They managed the scrum quite well. I was disappointed in Connacht because having watched them in person, practice and warm up and play really well at DHL Newlands last week in person, I expected more of them. But they sort of melded into sort of just uniformity play. No one stood out. They look like
that's something that I've thought about Connacht a few times.
Yeah, they look like they had sort of a good game in Cape Town. Maybe, I don't know if they went out to party or something immediately after the game, and then they got to Joburg and they were just like, yeah, let's just get it done with and get back on the plane. Because I was disappointed in their overall performance. But even Lubolelo Dubela, who's also from Griquas, I think he was like in the mix at flyer for the Lions at the end when he came on, and the Lions effectively maybe wanted to manage the game towards the end. All the Lions players, including him, they were just attacking the line, so that was fun. They might not have had a lot of people at the stadium, but they were like giving people a show, as it were. So good for them. Landsberg made an impact off the bench again. They're just going to make the most of their next two games, and they play Welsh teams, so it's not necessarily going to be easy, but at least they'll be able to throw the ball around a bit.
Well, we'll see about that. But Kaelan, it's and look, I'm being horrible. I'm sorry, Connacht fans. I honestly don't have anything against Connacht at all. Like I said many times, I love Galway, but it just feels like there's nothing to say about them anymore.
Yeah, the probably the one team this season that their season is petered off. Like I feel like everyone else, bar obviously the Dragons, for example, you kind of have something to still talk about. For Connacht, not necessarily the case. Once they suffered those injuries in that Racing game in Europe and decided, "Do you know what, we're not going to risk them down South Africa." I think we kind of had this sense. Good performance last week, probably should have snatched it. This week, not great. Again, a couple of players did stand out. Top Piers O'Connor was all right. Thought the two younger lads in that backline, Shane Jennings and Matthew Devine, were really, really good. And to be fair, I really like that Connacht pack build. Front row, fair enough, there was rotation there due to injuries. But Murphy, Joyce, Prendergast, Oliver, Janssen. Now, seemingly Conor Oliver could be leaving Connacht at the end of the season, but I think that's the build you want. You want your big six, big eight, big second row pairing, if not go three lock pack, which Prendergast kind of, he's not necessarily a third lock, but he's a big six. But just really unfortunate. Like they never really had a shot in this game, never really got going. Um, which kind of sums up their season. Like they've had games like this before this year where it feels like, you know what, they're in a good place. They could get something, but just never really get over the line. And again, to kind of go back to the argument I made a little bit earlier on, like Connacht were URC semi-finalists 2 years ago. Yes, under a different coaching staff, absolutely, but that's just really disappointing. They went. I'll put it up here, but they went 0 from 6 against the fellow Irish teams, 1 from 4 against the South Africans, and could very easily see themselves with maybe 2 wins from 4 against the Scottish and Italian sides. I know it's difficult when you're an Irish team, you have to play Irish teams who are all very competitive, but I think ultimately it is that not, you need to get 2 wins against South African teams, and that's where the Irish sides have really fallen off this year. Like Leinster, 3 wins from 4, fair enough. The rest of them, 1 win from 4 each, and that's been probably the big hallmark. And I think that does come down to depth, where South Africa have lads who have never played pro rugby ready to go somewhere, just to pull them out of some random school or out of the Griquas or Pumas or whatever. That's their greatest asset, or pull them out of, I don't know, some feeder team like Sale Sharks or someone like that. But
Yes, they Sharks, yeah.
But no, like it's not been a great season for Connacht. I backed them to kick on next year. New coach coming in, new director of rugby coming in, Rob Saib, and I cannot for the life of me remember the other guy's name, the guy that was with Quins. Do you know the Quins director of rugby? Yeah,
No,
I can't remember.
pass.
But yeah, new coaching staff on to next year, refreshed. Hopefully get Mac Hansen the full season, get more minutes out of Bundy, more minutes out of key players, Shane Bolton, for example, and build from youth, build for around your Matthew Devines, your Shane Jenningses, guys like that, and hopefully kick on next year. They still have a chance. They still have a very outside chance. They're Edinburgh and Zebre last 2 games. It's not beyond the realm of possibility, but it is very, very unlikely. Kind of like the Lions, even if they get 10 points, they're probably just too far out to actually have a realistic chance.
Now, this Connacht team looks a shadow of the one that beat the Sharks early in the season when the Sharks didn't have most, if not all, of their first choice sort of
That was a
Springbok
weird
players.
game as well,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because the Sharks
God.
started really fantastic. They were off a high from winning the Currie Cup undeservedly against the Lions, because effectively the Lions lost the Currie Cup. All they had to do was kick the ball out. And then the Sharks played about 25 minutes and then fell apart. So
Yeah. Okay, that's well done, everybody. That's all of the URC fixtures talked about. We shall finish the show, Kaelan, with just a quick mention of the Women's Six Nations, which came to its conclusion this weekend. The title was decided in a thrilling game between England and France that we shan't talk about because they're not URC nations. So I'll let you go first. Ireland clinched 3rd place with just 2 wins. This is a very weird table to look at. But they lost with the last play of the game against Scotland. Scotland, who had a very so-so championship. So just give us your quick rundown of this one.
I think ultimately here what we seen was just injuries just got to Ireland in the end. It's no excuse.
Dorothy Wall one was horrible
Dorothy
to see.
Wall one, if she ended up missing the World Cup, that is a hammer blow because
she was, for people who didn't see it, she was in the kind of sprint ready to go position, and then the ball gets offline and she goes and then she just falls.
Yeah.
And then she goes to get back up again and she falls again. So
non-contact Achilles
Yeah.
injury, which is usually the worst of them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold my hand up here. I'm not blaming any one team. I fucking hate plastic pitches. They're a disgrace on the game, if I'm being entirely honest. We see way too many injuries from them. And I'm not coming after Edinburgh. I'm not coming after Munster, Connacht, whoever else has them, Ulster. We see way too many injuries. And if Dorothy Wall misses the World Cup, it's going to be sickening because Aaron King is already out. Aoife Wafer missed this game. Enya Breen went off injured. Adela McMahon went off injured, both with HIAs. And I think it started to tell. Leadership in particular. Breen and McMahon have both captained Ireland before. Wall is a PWR player. I'm always checking my head to make sure I got the letters in the right order on that one. Like she's a gem of a player. Niamh O'Dowd got hurt in this game, and I think it just started to tell. Ireland just started to tire. A lot of players impressed for Ireland this year. Like it's still third. Yes, it's disappointing they didn't technically build on last year because that was 2 wins in third place as well. But it's not a bad championship, not by any means. You look at the points difference, like the fact that Ireland were, what, 53 points ahead of the nearest outside the top, whatever, outside the top 2. Just disappointing. And on to the World Cup now, and hopefully they'll build on it, hopefully get fit. Like we didn't see Bevan Parsons play a single minute, for example, in this tournament. Like obviously Aoife Wafer missed this game. I shout out to Niamh Jones, who started all 5 games, attempted 61 tackles, made 61 tackles. That is phenomenal. And without being anyways disrespectful, in the women's game where missed tackle stats are that little bit higher because, there's just a little bit more space on the field. That is an incredible stat, front row or otherwise. I know she's played back row, that's probably why. And she's the smiling assassin, we have dubbed her, because she always is smiling in photos, like Josh van der Fleer. Aoife Wafer was missed, disappointing, but absolute full confidence in the girls and in Scott Beeman that they'll kick on. And I still think if Ireland can get close to full fitness, even if Dorothy Wall is out and they can get Sam Monaghan back, I think they could be very much pushing for a semi-final.
Hell of a player. Word on Scotland, recovered some respectability to what was a very meh campaign.
Absolutely. I haven't really got a chance to talk to anyone about it because, just as I was kind of saying earlier, it's kind of been up to my eyes with assignments at college or uni, as you say. But definitely got that little bit of respectability back, especially after the loss to Italy at home, where they didn't really fire a shot. They were just ready. They were just ready for this game, just up for it the whole way through. And yeah, and they impressed me insofar as I thought that they wouldn't pull this performance out of the bag, if you get me. But coming into the tournament, I thought this was a game that they would be targeting, and they ultimately did. Got the win. Again, yes, Ireland would be frustrated. They definitely did enough to win that game, but so too did Scotland. And I think it sets up nicely. I do think, yes, I know Wales went to 0 from 5, but Ireland, Scotland, and Italy are all going to be thinking we are very much capable of beating someone on our day and getting into a World Cup semi-final, because obviously it's the new format now with 4 quarterfinals into 2 semi-finals.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something quickly about plastic pitches. You're right. I think, and there is research that suggests that female athletes will be more at risk of knee injuries and Achilles ankle injuries than men because of the anatomy. And also, I've suffered from a very serious injury on a plastic pitch playing football where I ruptured my ACL, broke my femur, and ripped the meniscus off both sides of my tibia bone, and that's 3 years ago, and I'm still recovering from it. So, and that was a non-contact. All I did was change direction, and ping, my knee went, and I fell like the sack of proverbial on the ground, and tears in my eyes, and never felt the pain like that. But there is something to be said about plastic pitches, about when you're starting from a starting position, stopping, and the pressure that puts through your ankles and your knees is horrendous, and it does seem to affect women more than it does men. So it'll be, the non-contact injuries are always the worst ones because they're bad. Yeah, the way that people land, it's just it's pretty sickening. But I feel for her. It's an awful thing to happen to.
And then, yes, I completely agree. And then from a Wales, Italy point of view, firstly on Italy are playing way better than they were a year ago. Like Wales played Italy in WXV2 last year down in South Africa, and it was one of the worst games of rugby you've ever seen. And Italy don't look like a completely different team. And I think what's impressive about Italy is they're able to go long phases in both attack and defence. They're able to slow you down, even against England. They were able to front up against England in defence, and like I said, they got a great win away to Scotland, and now they've got a very easy win against Wales. Wales, look, all I can say about Wales is what everybody else is saying. Last year, the stories were the bullying from Nigel Walker, the contracts not being sorted, and the substandard coaching. Now, contracts are signed, Nigel Walker is gone, and you've got the best coach available. There is no one more qualified for that job. So now the emphasis is starting to turn away from all the other things and towards the players. And that's how the narrative is. Wales women is basically a club side because of the way the WRU has chosen to do central contracts. And when, say, a football club goes through multiple managers with the same group of players and the same things keep happening, fans start to turn on players. Now, that sounds horrible and mean, and I don't want to turn on any of these players. A lot of them I like a lot. But now, these girls need to start feeling like, okay, it's on us. The excuses are starting to run out. So, yeah, it's difficult to look at that table. And the last 2 weekends, Wales have taken 40, and I've made excuses. Well, I've not made excuses. I've given my honest opinion of why I thought that wasn't fair. I can't do that this week. It was very difficult to watch Wales women today. So
that's fair. And ultimately, you are right. Like, it's shout out to Patricia Vieira on my own pod, kind of said it, like, ultimately you have to reach a point when you're discussing the women's game where you take off the kind of kid gloves, and I think there's too much of that in rugby anyway, especially in Ireland. Like, we got arses handed to us by France this year, and there was almost kid gloves around it. Should never happen. And in the men's game, I'm saying there, and I think that's the case with Wales. I do agree. Sean Lynn is the best man for the job. The WRU is improving, I think is the only way to say it. You'd hope. But I think it's a big, rest of 2025 for them. They could very easily grow into things and start to find themselves, and then come 2026, 6 Nations, they're in a better place. The World Cup is probably too much for them because they'll only have a 2-game lead in before they're in the championship. But they can grow from here, and I do think, you don't want to be in a situation where you're shipping 30 points in the second half in Parma to Italy, who haven't been great. Ireland hammered them. Scotland were poor against them. They've been annoying more than a great team. So hopefully Wales do kick on, and especially when they have talent there. Alex Callender, Jasmine Joyce, players like that. They're world-class players. So hopefully they do kick on, because WRU has made a lot of mistakes, but now it's just about focusing on themselves. And I firmly believe they will, because I think there's enough rugby IP in the room for them to kick off from there.
Yeah, fingers
Well,
crossed.
a few weeks ago when you said that the Scottish women's team reminded him of the men's senior rugby team, especially the forwards, I meant to ask, do you mean they're South African? What's going on?
No. Okay, well, that's a fun joke to end the podcast with. So thank you to That's Kaylin and to New Mohammed. Thank you to everybody for watching. If you have gotten this far, you clearly liked it. So if you're not subscribed, have a word with yourself. And just when the URC got fun, we're having a week off, because of course we are. So we'll be back.
not.
All right. Oh yeah.
Kaelin's not as well. Yeah,
All right.
Kaelin's got to watch the Leinster game.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm busy.
So cheers
Now
all,
you're
and
busy.
we'll catch you for the next round of Urk. Ta-ra.
Slán.
See you later.